Hello and welcome to the Let's Be Honest podcast. This is episode 2. I'm your co-host, Lana Simmons.
And I'm your co-host, Danielle Leibovich.
And let's talk about communication today.
Yes, it's a big topic. It's a big topic, and it's a very general, broad topic. So I wanted to dive into something really specific, the core of communication.
And you know, like when I think of communication, I think of talking only. Like you say something, I say something. There's no black or there's no gray area. Like it should be simple, right? Like I explain to you what's going on in my day, and then my expectation is that you understand exactly what I say. But I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. If only it worked that way. If only that's exactly what actually happened. But that is not at all what happens. Many of us are married. Even if we're not, we can relate to relationships with our spouses, our friends, parents, children, that when we're conveying information, even if they repeat it back to us, which is really something, they still don't hear us, which... why is that? Why is it so hard to be heard? And I have a few theories. Lana, feel free to jump in too at any time. Mm-hmm. Why I think it's so hard to be heard. First of all, we are in such a culture of distraction. We are holding a computer in our hands, so at any moment something can happen. By computer, I mean our smartphone. It's no longer a phone. It's social media, it's email, it's to-do lists, it's texts, it's everything in our hand, and we just don't have the attention that we used to.
No.
So first, that's one factor that gets in our way, is actually the attention. But the second factor is getting out of our heads and into someone else's, meaning oftentimes when we say something and people say, I heard you, or I hear you, or repeating it even back to them, the second part to that often gets missed is, I understand how you can feel that way, or I understand how you see it like that. I'm not talking about simple things like, get apples at the grocery store. Okay, I'll get apples at the grocery store. That's black and white. But when it comes to talking about the bigger things and wanting someone to really understand what we're saying, it's not enough that they hear the words. It's also that they understand what our point of view is, because that gives us the validation that we are contributing something that someone else sees. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I would even say, even with, like, I even have communications issues when I'm picking up stuff for people at a grocery store. If I'm conveying to my husband saying, hey, I need pinto beans at the grocery store or whatever. And, he can even, is it dried pinto beans? So it's like being really specific and making sure they understand what it is that you mean.
Yeah.
And the smartphone thing, oh, God, I feel so frazzled with my smartphone, because I can be having a really good conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden it either lights up, or it buzzes, or it dings, and I lose my complete train of thought. And I think that really degrades the quality of a conversation, honestly. And I'm not trying to say that if you use your smartphone all the time that you're a bad person. I'm not trying to say that at all. I just know for me, it hasn't always been a blessing. It's been kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Yeah, and, there's really not, we all have it one now. Mm-hmm. So it's really not even that, because we all have one and we all know what it feels like to get a ding and a bing, it's kind of become acceptable to just glance at your phone or say, hold on, let me shut this off, and then you're momentarily distracted as you read the entire text. And
yeah,
you know, and really it comes to monitoring yourself and being aware of what you're doing. And that's why what a tool that has been around since the beginning of time we can still use today. It's so powerful and often never, ever gets used when we're talking. Mm-hmm. Do I have your curiosity, Lana?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is simple eye contact. I know, right? Like, crazy.
Well,
I mean, actually looking at someone as they speak directly is just so far removed from our everyday life now because we can do more than one thing at once. So.
You know what? I didn't even think about that, Danielle, because so my son is autistic, and mm-hmm. when we were going through the process of him getting diagnosed with autism, because that's one of the things that they look for back at the old DSM. I know they've updated the DSM, but the one previous to the one right now, one mm-hmm. of the, and maybe it still is, I mean, I don't know, one of the symptoms of autism was the lack of eye contact. Mm-hmm. Well, Mason had the eye contact, but he didn't have some of the he obviously was lacking in other areas. But I thought that was so interesting that eye contact was that important. I guess I didn't even realize how important eye contact was until we were looking to see if my son had that.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, it's pretty intense. I mean, eyes are the windows to the soul, and looking into someone's eyes is pretty direct, you know? Mm-hmm. That's why it's not always hard to do. I mean, there's cultures in the world where you don't even look in someone's eyes because it's just too intense, that it's polite to just politely look just off to the right or left of their eyes.
You're saying disrespectful. It's
yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of different feelings about looking directly at someone when they're speaking, but in our culture, in America, I think it's very powerful to make that effort. Mm-hmm. Because also with our children, if our child comes to us very running and excited about their day, and we're not looking at them as they're talking, what kind of message is it to them? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I make it an effort to put down my things when my kids come home and go down to their level, literally, so I'm on their eye level and I can look at them. Mm-hmm. And I make a conscious effort to do that. It would be easy for me to just keep doing what I was doing and then just ask them questions while I was doing what I'm doing. But I don't want them growing up doing that to me in a few years. So yeah. I have to lead by example.
Wow, you know, I just never thought of that. And I'm thinking about how I interact with my kids now. It's always on a multitask mm-hmm. situation. I'm either in the kitchen cooking or cleaning or whatever and asking, well, how was your day? Tell me how was your day? Like, just kind of almost like a checklist, not really connecting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I just never thought of that before. And I'm like,
I know, it's so simple.
Yeah.
And we have them. And I know, you know, it's the simple things that really can make us the happiest in life if we use them. And but let's say we're not talking about, you know, just something as, you know, giving children our direct attention. Let's say we're having a deep conversation mm-hmm. with a spouse or a friend. And something has happened and that has hurt you. And you have created a safe space with them where you feel that you can bring this up. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens when you bring it up and and instead of them hearing you, they become either defensive or deflective. Mm-hmm. Like, literally waiting for you to stop talking so then they can talk their points. And so it's just like a match, like a game, like you're throwing the ball back and forth without really anything being achieved. Or you're sharing your perspective with them, and they deflect it, and just bring up 10 other things that are not even relevant to just shift the attention. And then you end up going and following that conversation when really it typically takes you away from where you wanted to go. So what do you do with that? And so we go back to, what do we want from someone when we speak to them? And so we go back to this word. So I looked up some definitions, because really that's where you have to start. And so I looked up 2 definitions. Listen means to take notice of and act on what someone says, respond to advice or a request, okay? So listening, there's an action to it. It's not just sitting quietly. It's there's the actual word act, to take notice of and act on what someone's saying. So it's not just simply repeating back what was heard. It's taking this information, retaining it, and giving back to the person something, okay? So something usually tends to be validation. And where is my definition for validation? Okay. I have validity, but let me look at validation. But this one says, demonstrate or support the truth or value of. So, in other words, we're looking to be seen for our truth. We want to know that what we're speaking is truth, even though that person might not be their truth, but it's truth for us. It's kind of like, I don't know if you heard this when you were growing up, but you have 6 blind men, and they're all holding a different part of an elephant. And one is convinced that what they're holding is a hose because they're holding the trunk. Another one's convinced that they're holding a snake because the other one's holding a tail. And then one's holding the foot, and so on. And everyone's right.
Yeah.
But they're all holding a part of the same thing, but it's a different part.
Well, as you're saying this, it actually makes me think about when there's a disagreement in life with either friends or family or whatever. I keep thinking that every time there has been a heated discussion, usually we're not fighting about the same thing. We're not even fighting. It's like we're having 2 completely separate fights. Mm-hmm. So as you're saying this, nobody's really listening in that type of situation, myself included.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not even arguing about the same thing. I might be arguing about how you hurt my feelings that you didn't get home in time for the kids, and my husband might be like, well, my feelings are hurt because you don't respect that I have to get home at this time and I can't control my job. So we're not even fighting.
It's like you're pleading your case is what you're doing.
Yes.
Like, who has a better case?
Yes. Yeah.
And then guess what happens? No one feels heard. Nothing.
Yeah,
you're just more frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I also find that, first of all, you have to take your time, because sometimes wanting to be heard when it's carpool is not a great time. Or, you have to just pick what your intention is and pick the time to do it. And the other thing, too, that has helped me is, at the end of the day, ultimately, when someone can't hear you the way you want to be heard, it's really nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
They are hearing something that's triggering them, and they've shut you down. So it's very easy to take that personally, but it's no longer personal because it's about them again. So if you can remember that and not personalize that my spouse just doesn't care, or my children or my friends or my coworkers just don't care,